Hello and welcome. In this session, we shall deal with the declarations in Form 15G and Form 15H. Now let us say I made a deposit with the State Bank of India. State Bank of India has to pay me interest. As per Section 194 Capital A of the Income Tax Act, at the time of payment or credit of interest to me, State Bank of India has to deduct TDS and pay the balance to me. Now this TDS is to be made in the circumstances mentioned in Section 194A, and that too if the amount of payment exceeds a threshold limit, barring a few exceptions. Means in certain cases TDS need not be deducted. Now one of the cases in which TDS need not be deducted is a case wherein I submit a declaration to the State Bank of India. On the strength of the declaration, State Bank of India need not deduct TDS to me. Now when State Bank of India receives a declaration from me, it need not deduct TDS, pay me the full amount, but however, there are certain obligations imposed upon State Bank of India. That is, only in certain circumstances it can accept the declarations, and also there is a procedure for filing of these declarations with the appropriate authorities. Now, we shall understand as to the circumstances and who is the payee, who can furnish a form to the payer, what are the prescribed forms, what is the law relating to these forms, and what is the procedure relating to these forms. Let's start straight away. Now before going into the e-filing of these forms, first of all let's understand the law relating to these forms, and thereafter we shall go to the procedure. The law relating to these forms are covered by Section 197 Capital A of the Income Tax Act and also Section 206 AA subsection 2 and Section 277. Also, the procedure relating to these forms have been provided in Rule number 29C. Rule number 29C states that the declaration should be in the forms 15G and 15H as the case may be. Also, we have a notification number 4 of 2015 dated 1/12/2015 and also a recent notification dated 9/6/2016, and the number of the notification is notification number 9 of 2016. So first let's understand the law which is being provided in these items, and thereafter we shall proceed to the e-filing. Now Section 197 Capital A subsection 1. What does it state? There is a payer who is liable to pay the sums referred to in Section 194 or Section 194EE. Now what are the payments which are specified in Section 194? 194 deals with dividends, means a payer is paying dividend. Or Section 194EE. What does this section state? Now this section is with regard to payment in respect of deposits under national savings schemes, etc. So the payer is paying any of these two types of payments to a payee. Now who can give the declaration in order to avoid the TDS? Only a resident individual can issue a declaration to the payer for non-deduction of TDS for the sums referred to in Section 194 or 194EE. Now this declaration is to be made in duplicate, means two sets of declarations are to be furnished by the payee to the payer. Now what does this particular payee declare in that particular declaration? He states that his income do not exceed the basic exemption limit, and that is the maximum amount on which tax need not be paid, and also the tax payable on his estimated total income for the previous year to which the declaration relates to is nil. So what he is declaring is his income does not exceed the basic exemption limit, and also the tax payable on his total income will be nil. Now, if these two conditions are satisfied, he being a resident and an individual, and the type of payment being received by this particular payee is those sums which are referred to in section 194 or 194E, then he can furnish a declaration in duplicate to the payer, upon which the payer will not deduct TDS and will give the full amount to the payee. Now this is subsection 1. Now what does subsection 1A of section 197A states? Now in this particular case, the types of payments being received are those which are specified in section 192 capital A or 193 or 194A or 194DA or 194I, means 5 payments. 5 types of payments are dealt by subsection 2 and 2 types of payments are dealt by subsection 1. Now, who is the eligible person who can furnish a declaration as per this particular subsection? Any person other than a company or firm can issue this particular declaration for receipt of payment without TDS. So here we have to understand that a firm or a company is not eligible to issue this particular declaration. Any person other than this particular company or firm can issue this particular type of declaration. Now what is the relevant form? It is form 15G, and this particular declaration is also to be given in duplicate as per this particular subsection 1A. Now what does the payee declare in this particular declaration? As in the previous case, in this particular subsection also, the payee declares that the total income, estimated total income for the previous year will not exceed the basic exemption limit, and the tax payable on the estimated total income will be nil. So this is the declaration. Next, coming to the subsection 1C. This is the third subsection. Now this is subsection 1C of section 197 capital A. Now what are all the types of payments referred to in this particular subsection? Here we have 7 types of payments. These 7 are the 2 given in the first subsection and 5 given in the second subsection. That is in subsection 1 we have 2 types of payments. In subsection 1 capital A we have 5 types of payments. Now all these 7 payments in this particular subsection 1C it has been provided. So what are all they? Let's go through each of them. Dividends 194, 192A, 193, 194A, 194DA, 194EE and 194I. As per this particular subsection, who is the eligible person that can make a declaration? A resident senior citizen. I repeat, resident senior citizen. Now residential status is to be determined as per section 6 of the Income Tax Act. Now what is the form in which this particular declaration is to be given? This declaration is to be given in form 15H and it has to be made in duplicate. So only a senior citizen can give declaration in form 15H. Now what is the declaration being made as per this particular subsection? The declaration being made is that the tax payable on estimated total income for the previous year will be nil. Now let's understand the difference between the declaration as per 15G and the declaration as per 15H. In 15G, the declarant declares that his total income do not exceed the basic exemption limit and the tax payable on the estimated total income is nil. But as far as form 15H is concerned, the declarant is declaring that only the tax payable on his total income is nil. So which implies that his total income, let us say there is a person whose has received rupees 4 lakhs from all these types of payments. Now after having received these 4 lakhs from these types of payments, the particular person who is a senior citizen made a deposit of 5 years, that is tax saving deposit in a bank of rupees 1 lakh. Now he is eligible for ATC. So what will happen? The gross total income is 4 lakhs and the amount of deposit made which is eligible for ATC is 1 lakh. Thereby the total income is 3 lakhs and the tax payable is nil. Now what about 15G? Let us say in the subsection 1 and 1 capital A, there are 7 types of payments which are being referred. If a payee receives more than 2,50,000 rupees from any of these items, then he is not eligible to give the declaration even though the tax payable on his estimated total income will be nil. So that is the difference between Form 15G and Form 15H. Now let's proceed to rule number 29C. Now what does rule number 29C state? It has altogether 8 sub-rules. Sub-rule number 1 states that the declarations for the purpose of non-deduction of TDS are to be made in either Form 15G or Form 15H. If you are covered by Section 197 capital A subsection 1, you are eligible to give declaration in 15G. If you are covered by 197 capital A subsection 1A, you are eligible to give declaration in 15G. And if you are covered by Section 197 capital A subsection 1C, you are eligible to declare in Form 15H. So declarations are to be made in either Form 15G or Form 15H. Thereafter, a payee has 2 options or 2 modes through which he can furnish this particular declaration. One is in paper form or another one is through electronic mode duly verified. Now what does it imply? Let us say I made a deposit with State Bank of India and I want to give a declaration in Form 15G. Now what I can do is I can approach the branch where I have made a deposit and give the paper form declaration in paper form 15G. Or else another mode that can be accepted is, let's say I have an internet banking with State Bank of India, SB account, savings bank account. If I log into my savings bank account, online banking account, there I may be provided a link wherein I shall be able to furnish a Form 15G. Now after filling that particular particulars in the particular e-filing website of that particular branch of State Bank of India or e-filing site of State Bank of India, I may be asked to submit that particular form. So these 2 types of or modes of furnishing of the declarations are permitted. One is through paper form, another one is through e-filing form. That is, a payee can furnish the declaration in electronic form to the payer or in the particular paper mode. Next, sub-rule 3. What does it state? Whenever a payer receives any declaration from the payee, immediately the payer has to allot a unique identification number to that particular declaration. Now, what will be the structure of that particular unique identification number, etc.? We shall deal at a later point of time in this particular discussion. Now coming to sub-rule number 4 of rule number 29C. What does it state? It states that maybe the payer is also deducting TDS for certain other deductees, wherein he has to file a quarterly e-TDS return. Now what the payer has to do is, he has to mention all the declarations which he have received in that particular quarter in the quarterly e-TDS return also, along with the unique identification numbers. What does sub-rule 5 state? Sub-rule 5 states that, let's say a particular payer do not deduct any TDS in a particular quarter, but he has received some declarations. Let us say he has received in Q1 of 16-17 some 10 declarations, and in Q1 he did not deduct TDS for anybody. Now this particular payer, though no TDS is deducted by him during that quarter, what he has to do is he has to at least furnish a nil quarterly return. Or else what he has to do is he has to log into the Traces account, and there he has to state that he need not file the TDS return for that particular quarter because of so and so reason. Now what this sub-rule states that even though you do not deduct TDS in that quarter, you are required to mention these declarations received along with unique identification numbers in the quarterly TDS return. That's what sub-rule number 5 of rule number 29C states. Next, sub-rule number 6. What does it state? It states that the payer, after receiving these declarations, is responsible to maintain those declarations for a period of 7 years from the end of the financial year in which the declarations are received. Generally, for that particular financial year, relevant forms will be received, and let us say the particular payer received forms in the financial year 16-17. Now what he has to do? From 31st March 2017 onwards, he has to maintain for a period of 7 years. Means 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So for the forms received in 16-17, he has to maintain those forms up to 31/3/24. Means from the end of that financial year he has to maintain for 7 years. And also he should make available those forms for verification by any income tax authorities. Next, what does sub-rule number 7 state? Sub-rule number 7 states that the Principal Director General of Income Tax Systems is the prescribed authority who shall prescribe the procedures, formats and standards for furnishing, means furnishing of declaration by the payee to the payer, and also verification, allotment of unique identification numbers, etc. So this particular prescribed authority, being Principal Director General of Income Tax Systems, shall oversee all these things. Next, what does sub-rule number 8 of rule number 29C state? It states that this prescribed authority, that is the Principal Director General of Income Tax System, not only he will prescribe the procedures, but also he is responsible to make available the information to certain prescribed authorities. Now who are those prescribed authorities to whom this particular authority is responsible to make available information? Now let us say my jurisdiction, my assessment jurisdiction is with Ward 11 Vijayawada. ITO, Assessing Officer, ITO Ward 11 Vijayawada. Now this assessing officer is subordinate to a commissioner or a chief commissioner or a principal commissioner or a principal chief commissioner. So to all those 4 authorities, the principal chief commissioner, principal commissioner, commissioner, to whom this assessing officer is subordinate, to all those 4 authorities, this particular Principal Director of Income Tax Systems should make available this particular information. Next, we shall proceed to section 206 AA subsection 2. This particular subsection requires that valid PAN number is to be quoted in the declaration, be it form 15G or form 15H. Now what is the implication if PAN number is not quoted or where invalid PAN is quoted. It implies that the declaration has never been made or the declaration is invalid. Now what if the declaration is invalid? If the declaration is invalid, the deductor or the payer for that matter has to deduct TDS. Now then also, where PAN number is not quoted or wrong PAN number is quoted, the rate of TDS is generally 20%. Now, Section 277 of the Income Tax Act. What does it state? It is a penal clause. It states that where by false declaration the tax sought to be evaded exceeds rupees 25 lakhs, then the penalty is rigorous imprisonment which is not less than 6 months and which may extend up to 7 years and with fine. In any other case, the rigorous imprisonment should not be less than 3 months but which may extend to 2 years and includes fine. Therefore, the payee has to be very careful while declaring the declarations in Form 15G or Form 15H. So they have to think twice before declaring these particular forms. Next, we have notification number 9 of 2016, which is clarificatory in nature, dated 9/6/2016, issued by the Director of Income Tax Systems. Now, in this particular notification, the due dates have been clarified. As per this notification, the Q1 declarations received means, let us say there is a payer who has received these declarations in Form 15G or Form 15H for the period from 1st April 2016 to 30th June 2016, means Q1 of the financial year 16-17. Now, for all those declarations received in that particular Q1 of 16-17, the due date for filing them is 15th July of the financial year, means 15th July of 2016. And mind you, now as per the current procedure, the manual filing has been withdrawn. These forms, as per rule number 29C, have to be made only through e-filing process on the e-filing website. Now for Q2, the due date is 15th October of the financial year. Means the payer for all the declarations received during Q2 of financial year, he has to submit online all these declarations, consolidated Form 15G or consolidated Form 15H, by 15th of October of that particular financial year. Similarly, for Q3 it is 15th January, and for the Q4 it will be 30th of April. Means for Q4 of financial year 16-17, the declarations are to be e-filed latest by 30th of April 2017. Also, this particular notification states that in respect of declarations received in Q3 and Q4 of financial year 15-16, the last date for e-filing is 30th June 2016. Maybe this is a one-time extension wherein in order that the payers are to get acquainted with the procedures and systems, they were lenient and they have extended the time to up to 30th June 2016. Next comes notification number 4 of 2015, issued by Directorate of Income Tax Systems, dated 1st December 2015. Now previously in sub-rule 7 of rule number 29C, what we have learnt is the prescribed authority to prescribe the procedures etc. for the purpose of submission of these particular Form 15G, Form 15H, or for the purpose of electronic filing of these forms, the procedures will be prescribed by this particular Principal Director General of Income Tax Systems. Now, based upon the power derived from that particular rule, what this particular authority has done is, it has issued this notification where it has specified the standards, procedures, etc. Now, what is this particular procedure that has been prescribed? Now, this notification states that due verification through an electronic process is to be made to ensure non-repudiation of the declarant. Now, let us say we already know that as per rule number 29C, the declarant, that is the payee, can make a declaration either electronically or in the manual form. Now let us say in the manual form what the declarant will do is he will fill up the form and he will sign it and go to that particular payer and give that particular form, based upon the strength of which the deductor or the payer will not deduct TDS. But what about the electronic form? Now let us say I have submitted a declaration in electronic form. Now the particular payer has to ensure that thereafter there is no non-repudiation. Now what do you mean by non-repudiation? Non-repudiation means at a later point of time I may say that I did not furnish that particular electronic declaration. Now what is the recourse then? So what this particular notification states is the payer has to take adequate safeguards and also he has to maintain a log of the electronic activity to establish the identity and credentials of the declarant and also to ensure that thereafter there will not be any non-repudiation. Now also this particular notification provides that the payer has to make a reconciliation of all the unique identification numbers. Now what is this? Here, whenever the payer receives the declarations, first of all he has to allot a unique identification number. That's first part. Thereafter what he has to do is he has to furnish a quarterly consolidated form 15G or form 15H return. Thereafter he has to mention all these declarations along with unique identification numbers in the quarterly ETDS returns. Now sometimes it may so happen that the payer may miss out to include certain declarations in the quarterly form 15G, form 15H return. Or sometimes he may receive the declaration, he may have mentioned it in the 15G, 15H quarterly return, but he may miss out to include that in the quarterly ETDS return. Now what this particular notification provides is the payer has to prepare an exceptional report. Now this is the third return. One is the 15G, 15H return, another one is the ETDS return, and this is an exceptional report wherein you and also the particular form and the procedure for e-filing of this particular exceptional report will be separately available on the e-filing portal. Now in that particular report you have to make a reconciliation, that is in one part you have to mention all those identification numbers which are not reported in the TDS system statement, and in the second part you have to mention all those unique identification numbers which are not uploaded onto the income tax website. So this reconciliation report is also to be furnished. Next comes the unique identification number part. Now the structure for unique identification number is provided by the Director of Income Tax Systems in notification number 15G, notification number 4 of 2015 dated 1st December 2015. Now what does this notification state? It states that the unique identification number should be a running serial number, point number 1. Point number 2, the unique identification number should be reset to 1 at the beginning of the financial year. Point number 3, this running serial number should be different for form 15G and it should be different for form 15H. Now this unique identification number comprises of 3 parts. The first part comprises of 10-digit alphanumeric code. For 15G it should start with G and for 15H it should start with H. After that, there will be 9-digit serial number. Means for the first declaration you have to give serial number 1. So what you will do? First you start with G. Thereafter you give 8 zeros and thereafter you give 1. Now this is first part of the unique identification number. Now come to the second part. The second part should comprise of the financial year. Now let us say if it is for 15-16, you have to give 201516. That is 2015-16. Now what is the third part? The TAN number of the payer. So this is 3 parts. So how many digits you get? First is 10. Thereafter it is 6. 16 plus 10 means 26 number. Already we are used to bank numbers which are very lengthy in number. So maybe in 1 or 2 years we will be getting used to this particular serial number 26 also. That's not a big thing, I suppose. So let us see here. This is the first part until here. This is the first part until here. I think I have lost this. Let's do one thing. We shall go to that particular slide. There it is. Here, the first 10 digits are running serial number, starting with G for 15G and starting with the H for 15H. Thereafter, you have 2015-16, the financial year for which this particular declaration is received, and thereafter you have the TAN number. So for the second one, you will get Z followed by 8 zeros 2. Thereafter 15-16 and thereafter TAN number. So this 1, 2, 3 will be a serial number. So this is how unique identification number is to be structured. So friends, we have concluded the law relating to these particular declarations. Now, before going into e-filing, what we will try to do is just we will go through Form 15G and Form 15H once. Now these forms are available for download in the income tax website also. Now this is form number 15G. This is form number 15G. Now what does it state? Now this particular form, as you can observe, the particular heading is form 15G, and also rule number 29C and section 197A subsection 1 and 197A subsection 1. We already learnt as to under which subsection this particular form can be furnished. Now this form comprises of 2 parts. One is part 1, another one is part 2. Part 1 relates to the declaration made by the payee, and part 2 relates to the items which are to be filled in by the payer. So part 1 is for payee and part 2 is for the payer. Now what does the part 1 of this particular declaration comprises of? And it will comprises of name, PAN number, etc. We shall go into detail once we fill that particular online form. Now, 1 or 2 issues I shall stress in this particular point of time. Here, you come to point number 16. What does it state? Estimated income for which this declaration is made. So, in point number 16, you have to give the amount for which only this declaration is made. Now come to point number 17. What does it state? Estimated total income of the previous year in which the income mentioned in column 16 is to be included. Means let us say you are giving a declaration for financial year 15-16. In 16th column you have to give only the amount for which you give this declaration. For 17th column you have to give the estimated income of your previous year. Now come to column 18. This column is tricky column. What it says is details of form number 15G other than this form filed during the previous year. Now let us say I made 4 deposits with State Bank of India at 4 different points of times. Now let us say in the month of April I went into a branch with to make a fixed deposit. Now at that time I might have given one declaration. Now that deposit is 1 lakh and let's say the interest payable for the year is 7,500. Now I will furnish that declaration for 7,500. Again next month I went and made another deposit of let us say 2 lakhs. Now this time the interest receivable, let us say it is 14,000. Again I may be giving another declaration. Now here for the first declaration this particular 18th column will be nil. No, but when it comes to the second declaration, in 16th point I should give 14,000 and in the 17th point what I have to do is the estimated total income of my previous year is to be given, and coming to the 18th column what I have to do is while giving the second declaration, by this time I have already given one declaration. So what I have to say, total number of forms of 15G file will be 1. Means other than this previously I filled one form. That I have to note here. And the aggregate amount of income for which those previous forms are issued. So means other than this form, prior to this form I gave one form and in that form I declared 7,500 as income. So for the second declaration what I have to do is I have to note 14,000 here. I have to mention the total estimated income from all sources for the previous year here, and prior to this second declaration I gave one declaration in the month of April, that I have to record here 1. In that declaration I mentioned a value of 7,500 I have to declare here. Right. Next, details of income for which the declaration is filed. Now, let us say I made the first deposit. Let us say this declaration is for the second deposit. Now here what I have to do is I have to give the details of this declaration only, second declaration. Now here I have to give the identification number of the relevant investment account. Let us say here as a identification number I can provide the fixed deposit account number. Now here I have to give the nature of income, it is interest, and section under which the tax is deductible, 194A, whatever it is the nature of income, and what is the amount of income. The second declaration is being given for 14,000, that I have to mention. So friends, the payees should be very careful while declaring or while mentioning the income particulars in point number 16 to point number 19. I once again stress upon this particular point that you should be very careful while filling point number 16 to point number 19. Now you have this declaration part. Also we have dealt with while we are dealing with the law relating to these particular forms, but also here you have one more declaration, that is whatever income you are being received or giving declaration for that money is not to be included in the income of any other person under section 60 to 64. Means for this money the clubbing provisions are not applicable. That's an additional declaration you are making. And also here you should be very careful that in point number 17, estimated total income of the previous year. Here we are given that to refer to point number 6. Point number 6 of the notes. Let's go to the point number 6 of the notes. What does it say? Please mention the amount of estimated total income of the previous year for which the declaration is filed, including the amount for which the declaration is filed, including the amount of income for which this declaration is made. It implies that for the all the estimated total income of the previous year has to be mentioned. And also there are some other points that are being given, and also your attention is also I like your attention to this particular 12th note, which states that the person responsible for paying the income referred to in column 16 of part 1 shall not accept the declaration where the amount of income of nature referred to in subsection 1 and 1 capital A of 197A means total 7 types of payments. One deals with 2 types of payments and 1A deals with 5 types of payments. Or aggregate of the amounts of such income credited or paid are likely to be credited or paid during the previous year in which such income is to be included exceeds the basic exemption limit. So, where the income exceeds the maximum amount not chargeable to tax, not only the payee should make the declaration, but in case the payee makes a declaration, the payer has to verify this particular column number 16. What does column number 16 state? Column number 16 state estimated income for which this declaration is made. Now this along with all other types of payments means in total 7 types of payments. If that amount of payments in a particular previous year, if they are going to exceed the basic exemption limit, the payer at first place should not accept the particular declaration even though the declaration is furnished by the payee. It implies that TDS is to be deducted. Now, Form 15H will also be more or less in the same type, barring a few exceptions. In this particular form, the date of birth is also to be given, and also let us say in the declarations, one declaration will be missing when compared to Form 15G, that is the particular income do not exceed the basic exemption limit. So here he will be making only 2 declarations. One is this income referred to in this declaration is not liable to be clubbed with other person, and the tax payable on the total income does not exceed the tax payable on total income will be nil. So here also you have 2 parts. The first part is to be filled by the payee and the second part is to be filled by the payer. Here also you have some notes you can go through and which can be understood easily. Now these are the forms. Now let's proceed to the procedure part or the e-filing part. Now what happened is the payee has given the declaration, payer received it, payer allotted unique identification number. Now once the quarter is completed, let us say Q1 is completed. So for all the declarations received during the period from 1st April to 30th June have to be populated in a consolidated file, and it has to be e-filed in the e-filing website of the Income Tax Department. Now for that we require a software. Now what we can do is we can directly go to the Income Tax e-filing website from where we can download the particular form in which this particular return can be prepared. So let me go to Income Tax India e-filing website. Go to this particular website. Now if you observe here there is something called forms other than ITR. Now in that go to this particular form 15G consolidated. In this session I shall demonstrate how to e-file form 15G, and the procedure for form 15H is more or less the same. Now what you have to do is go to this form 15G and click on download. Click on download. Also what we have to understand is in order to run this particular form, Java is to be installed on your system. These forms work only with Java. Let's see whether this is done. Of course it is being downloaded. It may take a while. Yes, the download is complete. Now what we have to do is we have to extract this particular zip file. It is being extracted, and as it is extracted we no longer need that particular file. Now here you have this particular folder. We shall run this particular program. we shall run this particular program. Now we got the form. Now what you have to do is go to form 15G consolidated. Here you have the instructions. You can go through these particular instructions. Go to this form. You have to give the TAN number of the payer. The TAN number of the payer is HYDA09839E, and you have to select the quarter. It is Q4 of 15-16. Mind you, for Q4 and Q3 of 15-16, the date is extended till 30th June of 2016. So there is no harm in filing on this date, that is on 27th of June. Next comes the basic details. Now what you have to do is, you have some buttons here. This is import CVC CSV file with basic details. Now let us say there are large institutions who have some thousands of 15G or 15H. What they can do is they can capture the data, or maybe these particulars may be actually having with them, like name, PAN number, address, etc., which can be through a program. They can export it to a CSV file, and from there they can import into this particular software. Now here what you can do is, you have to add a row. Now first of all you have to give the unique identification number. Now this is the first declaration that is being received by the deductor, by this particular payer, for the quarter Q4 of 15-16. Thereby the unique identification number allotted to this particular payee is G1234567 thereafter 1, thereafter it is 2015-16 financial year, and thereafter the TAN number HYDA09839E. Next, what is the name of the SSC or name of the declarant? It is A Sailaja Devi. Next, what is the PAN of the SSC? 7064P. Mind you, all these columns are mandatory fields. Status is individual, residence status is resident, and what is the previous year for which declaration is being given? It is financial year 15-16, and what is the address of this particular declarant? The address of this particular declarant. What is the road number near Ganesh Mandir? What is the locality? R Agraharam. And what is the town? Guntur. What is the state? Andhra Pradesh. What is the pin code? 522003. What is the email ID? Now friends, obtaining and capturing all these information is a challenging task. Let's see whether it is a mandatory field or a optional field. It is mandatory. So you have to compulsorily give the email ID, and the email ID is A Sailaja Devi at rediffmail.com. Let me check. A Sailaja Devi at rediffmail.com. And STD code, phone number, I think these are optional, so we can skip. What about mobile number? It is compulsory. So you should compulsory provide the mobile number. The mobile number is 9490060111. Let me check. 9490060111. And whether assessed to tax under the Income Tax Act 1961. Friends, this question is tricky. Now what you have to answer here, whether this particular SSC has filed any return in the earlier periods, or whether what is the question exactly here? the question exactly here is whether assessed to tax under the Income Tax Act 1961. Friends, in my opinion, you may differ, but in my opinion, assessment means only regular assessment or the best judgment assessment is an assessment. Now here the question asked is whether assessed. Now mere filing of return of income I don't think is assessed. Now in my opinion, what we have to do is only where a regular assessment or a best judgment assessment has been carried out or a reassessment has been carried out in any of the earlier years, this question is to be answered as yes. So though this particular SSE has furnished returns in the earlier periods, this SSE was never assessed to tax. So I can safely say that no. Next comes estimated income for which this declaration is made. So you have to give only the amount for this declaration. Thereafter, estimated total income of the previous year. In this SSE's case, here it is 2,15,000, means for the entire previous year from all sources of incomes. Now, total number of Form 15G filed prior to this declaration. Now, this particular declarant did not give any declarations prior to this, and aggregate amount of income for which Form 15G filed in the previous declarations for this particular previous year. No declarations are filed and also the amount is 0. Now date on which this declaration is given, it is 31/3/2016, and the amount paid is also 1,01,820, and date on which the income has been paid or credited, it is an unsecured loan, and for unsecured loans generally you know that the interest will be credited on the last day of the financial year. So all the columns are filled. Let me save. It is saved. Now if there are any errors, then automatically they will be displayed in this particular validation errors pane. Now once this is done, what you have to do is, if you want to add another row, again what you have to do is you have to click on add. And if you want to edit a particular already populated row, you have to click this one. Or else if you want to delete a row, you have to click this particular button. Now, since this particular payer has only one declaration, I will just proceed. Next you have to go to add income details. Please select a row. So for this particular row, I have to add income details. Now this unique identification number is automatically populated. Now I have to give the identification number of the investment. Let's say if this particular payee has made a deposit with bank, they may have a fixed deposit account number. But here it is an unsecured loan. The payer do not have the practice of allotting any numbers. So what I will mention is, here I will mention unsecured loan. Next, what is the nature of income? It is interest. And what is the section under which if at all TDS is to be deducted? It is 194A, which refers to payment of interest other than interest on securities. And what is the amount of income? That is 1,01,820. Now, actually, this is this particular amount relating to this particular declaration. So what I have to do is, I have to click on save. Now since only one declaration is there for the Q4 for this particular payer, we are done with the data entry. Now what you have to do is, you just validate. Now the form is validated successfully. Now what you have to do? Thereafter you have to generate XML. See the XML, it is asking us the place where the file is to be saved, and I will name it as Andalam. Okay, save. Now this particular thing has been saved. I am done with the data entry, as also I have generated the XML. Now I can close this particular software. I have got this particular file that is to be uploaded. In the next step, what I have to do is, I have to log into the e-filing website. I have to log into the e-filing website of the income tax department. Now here I have to log in. Friends, here we have to give TAN number as the user ID. Now, what is the procedure for registration of the TAN number for e-filing purpose has been demonstrated in detail in a previous session. The link of that particular session has been provided in the notes to this particular video. Viewers interested in going through the procedure may please click on that particular link to understand the procedure for registration of TAN number. Now, this particular payer is already registered with the e-filing website. So, just I will log in this case, and the user number is the TAN number. User ID is the TAN number HYDA 09839E, and I have to give the password. Thereafter, I have to give the verification code and click on login. Now we are logged into this particular account. You may go to this e-filing menu wherein you have to select submit form 15G or form 15H consolidated. You have to click that submenu option, and what is the form being filed 15G, what is the financial year 15-16, what is the quarter Q4, and the filing type is original, and click on validate. Friends, not only the payer has to get himself registered, but also he has to possess a digital signature certificate. You have to sign this particular form which is being uploaded. Now, the utility for signing this is provided here. We have to click on that, wherein the particular utility will be downloaded, and you can extract that particular utility. Now what you have to do is, you have to run this particular DSC management utility. It is open. Now to sign this particular upload file, you have to select the bulk upload tab. There you have to browse the zip file which is to be uploaded. The zip file that is to be uploaded is on the desktop and is named as Andalam. And what is the e-filing user ID? The e-filing user ID is HYDA 09839E. Now what is the PAN of the DSC? Friends, actually this payer status is a HUF and represented by Karta. The digital signature is in the name of the Karta. So we require the PAN number of the Karta. The PAN number of the Karta. I will populate. Oh my god, it won't accept, it says. So copy paste is not possible. What I have to do is, I have to note down this PAN number and enter there. ABDPA 9585C. Let me check. ABDPA 9585C. So I have to give the PAN number of the Karta, that in whose name the DSC is being taken. ABDPA 9585C, and it is a USB token, and you have to select the certificate and generate the signature file, for which I have to give the password of the DSC. Password of the DSC. So the signature file is being generated and it is placed on the desktop. This is the signature file. Now I have to go into the e-filing site. I have to browse the upload file, and also I have to browse the signature file. Then what I have to do is, I have to upload. The form is being got uploaded, and I have got a confirmation message. Friends, I always suggest you take a screenshot of this particular screen so that it may be required for future reference. So I will save this on the desktop and call it as filing success. Friends, the file is being got uploaded. Now we have to check what is the status of this uploaded file. For that purpose, go to my account and select the menu option View Form 15G or 15H Consolidated. Now you give the particular details of the form that you have furnished. It's 1516, 15G and Q4, and you click on View Details, wherein you get the details. Now a transaction ID has been allotted and the status it displays as accepted. Friends, what you can do is you can click on this particular transaction ID, and therein if you observe, an acknowledgement number has been generated and allotted to this particular filing, and if you observe, there is something called as a zip file as attachment, that is the particular file which we have uploaded is also available, and there is something called as receipt. If we click on receipt, we get the particular receipt for the filing of this particular consolidated Form 15G file. Here we have the acknowledgement number as also the name of the payer, the TAN number of the payer, and the date on which the form has been furnished. We can take a print or we can save a particular copy of this acknowledgement for future references. So I will save it on the desktop and name it as, I will save it on the desktop and name it as ACK or acknowledgement and save it. Now this particular acknowledgement can be saved for future references. Since we are done with this particular thing, we shall log out of this particular e-filing website. Friends, this is how e-filing of consolidated Form 15G or Form 15H is to be made. Friends, I thought that in this session we dealt with the law and procedure of these declarations in detail and in a comprehensive manner. Friends, if you have any doubts or comments, you can very well post in the comments of this particular video. I am always open for your comments or for your criticism also. See you in another session. Thanks for watching.